2, 1. We're recording. And, well, technical difficulties are a hallmark of this podcast, but today was, man, the computer really went above and beyond to make this a special day by butchering everything. So we have gone back and forth, and on the off chance that we start to get feedback again on this, me and Mr. Beckenhauer are just going to switch to FaceTime. But in the meantime, this is apparently working. It's kind of like a nuclear fusion reactor. It's stable temporarily. But how about you introduce yourself, sir?
Don't make any false moves.
I know, right?
Okay, well, I'm John Beckenhauer, and I'm living out here in Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm a 30-year Army veteran, helicopter pilot. I don't know what else. Grew up on a small farm in Nebraska. Got drafted. I was 17 years old, went in, signed up and volunteered, and got into the warrant officer program. And then went off to flight school in Vietnam for 3 years, and then back and served my rest of the time either in active duty or sometime in the Guard and Reserve while I was going to college, and then back on active duty, and then served in parts all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Then a medevac unit I flew for 21 years, and then the rest of the time I was on the desk, pretty much in Washington, D.C. or in Europe.
Mm-hmm. And you also worked in White House communications, correct?
Yeah. After I retired in '97, I went to work the next month with a White House communications government contractor. And I worked in drug policy office and the situation room. We had employees. We had about 36 employees that worked in 18-acre area. We ran the computers there, the Secret Service radios, the telephone system, situation room, and press conference room, the radio broadcasting, pretty much anything that had to do with communications, and especially in the secure area. Our company managed and provided all the equipment for that. So
I wonder if, because we spoke, and for everybody listening, we're doing an episode today and tomorrow. Tomorrow, I believe we're going to do the White House communications. Today is going to be more so your experiences and stories of piloting. But I thought it was kind of funny because when we were texting, I was like, "Is there anything like you can tell me?" And you gave me some some stuff you could probably find on Wikipedia. And you're like, "If I tell you any more, I'll have to kill you."
Yeah.
And the thing is like that's not an uncommon response from guests I have on this show. Delta Force, CIA. A lot of it really is. It's like, Tom, I can't. I actually. And I'm like, no, it's cool. We're on the phone. And they're like, you don't understand. There's no hiding. And I'm like, okay. It's so
you're sworn to never reveal that stuff, and a lot of it's it's pretty common knowledge for the most part. But all you got to do is leak one little thing.
Well, yeah, absolutely. One guy I've had on.
Not like Hillary that can.
I know, right?
Do stuff all day long and nobody go to jail. I'd go to jail.
Yeah. Oh, I thought C stood for what? And it's like what? But yeah, you're right. And it is leaking. And if you can't tell, this podcast, there's no path. We don't have a set of bullet points to hit. We just start walking. So that's where we're going to go. One of the guys I've had on several times, Dale Comstock, youngest member ever of Delta Force. He was involved in the raid and was it Panama in the late 80s, Acid Gambit to go get CIA officer Kurt Muse.
Right.
But, they talked about, and I've also had on Mike Durant, the pilot from Black Hawk Down guy, Mr. Durant, 160th SOAR. But reading both their books, they talked about going in and kind of getting ready for to go in and get Noriega and do whatever. But they talked about how the entire thing had to be executed kind of, I think they said maybe like 30 minutes earlier than they'd planned, because one guy called home on a payphone because he was just, he's one of the lower guys, but he was just read in like an hour before. So he called home to tell his parents, he's like, "Hey, I think we're about to do something, in case I die, I love you." Which, sure, I get, but of course, the government caught it. The whoever Noriega's guys caught the telephone call. They started alerting all the anti-aircraft, and the whole thing was just like, we got to go now. So it's very real, right? OPSEC is very real.
Well, they say loose. What's the old World War
Loose
II
lips
saying?
and
Loose
ships.
lips sink ships,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. And
Never
it's
think
yeah,
much.
yeah. No, but it's true. And so yeah, but the point is so you were like, I'd have to kill you, and it's like I understand, but it's kind of funny because I always joke that that I have some friends in the NSA or the FBI who are watching this podcast because every once in a while I'll have a guest on and it will cut out right at a weird time. I had on a guy that did EOD, bomb squad for the Secret Service, and he was like, "It's pretty easy to build a bomb." And then from that moment forward, the connection was horrible. It fell a lot, and it was like, oh, "Of course, this is happening." So the whole thing is, yeah, I kind of feel like maybe that's what it was. Is they're like, "Oh, he's about to go on, spill the beans, Mister Beckon."
Yeah. I find how interesting it is how you get a hold of the people you do get the hold of. You've got some pretty good network system out there to get a hold of, talk to some interesting people. You know?
Oh, thank you. That's what everybody says, and they always say how to. One of my friends has a podcast who I'd love for you to go on. His name's Don. He has got about 10 times as many people as I do. But I remember he asked me, he was like, "How do you get all these people?" And I was like, "I just email them." But he says his nickname for me is Long Reach. He's like, because before I broke 1,000 subscribers, I had on Charlie Duke, the 10th man to walk on the moon. And
There
he was
you
like,
go.
that is a feat. But yeah, so, but actually, I mean, I had on the author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul guy, Mark Victor Hansen, yesterday. He wrote a book called Ask. And the whole thing is about how you just have to ask. And I was like, well, I know firsthand that's how this works. For you, I had on Ken Moffat, and I was like, Ken, do you know any, in probably less formal terms, I was like, do you know any cool cats who would come on the show? And he was like, as a matter of fact, I do.
Yeah.
Put me in touch with you, and we've been playing. But let's just jump on into your stories. So we'll save White House stuff for tomorrow. You did. You said was it 3 tours in Vietnam?
Yeah, three tours. I did three back to back.
Yeah.
Uh, that wasn't uncommon for helicopter pilots. Um, you went over there. Most tours start over 12 months,
Mhm.
and you go for 12 months. You go home for 3 to 5 months, get orders, you turn around, came right back, and then third tour same way. I don't know, maybe only 20% of us did three tours.
Mhm.
I was single at the time, not married. I had no responsibilities outside of my own family. So, and my whole goal in life, since I was 7 years old, I wanted to be a pilot,
Mhm.
and my ultimate goal was to get into airlines. So, I wanted to fly Navy or Air Force, but you had to have 4 year degree. And Army didn't need that. All you needed was the 4 year degree
Yeah.
or the high school degree. And so when I got the draft notice, I just, well, let me go down and see if I qualify. I passed the flight physical, and I already had a private pilot's license. So they just said, well, sure, come on over here. And what a deal I got for you. Look at here. We got an open slot right here. So that's what I did. I would have gotten taken out of college. I was in college my freshman year, and I don't know, maybe I didn't have the grades or something, but anyway, I got the draft notice, and when I signed up, I was able to delay going in until I finished the second semester. So I went in July of '67, I guess it was, and I went to basic training. All of us go to warrant officer programs. You go to basic training, AIT, and then off to flight school. And flight school was 5 months at Fort Walters, Texas. And then you go off to either Fort Rucker or Fort Hunter Liggett, or where is that? That's in Georgia, I guess, Savannah, Georgia. I got Fort Rucker. So half the class went one direction, half went the other. And when my class was about 400 students by then, the helicopters, of course, were really coming of age in '67, '68. I don't know how many were over there by then, but there was probably 4,000 or 5,000 of them. So that means at least 8,000 pilots in the pipeline, either going or coming. And so it was almost 99% sure when you graduated, you were going to go to Vietnam.
Yeah.
Some guys had already been over there as a infantry or whatever, artilleryman, come back and joined the flight program and got in as E6s or 7s or whatever. And so several of those got different tours rather than Vietnam. So they'd already served. If you volunteered, of course, you went. When I got my orders to go to Vietnam, I also got orders to go to an advanced flight program, which was the CH-47 Chinooks. And at that time, warrant officers, W1s, didn't go to flight school. They had just opened that up. They thought it being an advanced aircraft that only second tour people basically got it. You had to have at least 1,000 hours to even apply for Chinook school. Well, I had a grand total of 280, I think, something like that. Yeah. But they tried this thing where they took the best, the top students out of every class as warrant officers because they were so short Chinook pilots. Most of the Chinook pilots were W2s, W3s, and 4s by then, senior guys that didn't want to go back a second tour. Those one had families and they'd served in Korea War already. And we even had one guy that was a World War II pilot that was, he'd actually got out, retired, and went back in, Pappy Dietz. And he was actually killed in Vietnam. So the experienced pilots were hard to find, but there were enough around, and they were mostly the mentors for us, the younger kids. So anyway, I finished in the top 3 of my class, so I was able to get the Chinook class. And that wasn't any big deal because I'd already had a pilot's license when I went in. So I had a big advantage over a lot of the number 1 and the number 2 guy were both airline pilots already that got drafted. So yeah. they were pretty experienced already. So I was very fortunate. I was the only W1 that got the Chinooks. So I went down but there was a 6-week holdover. I was a snowbird for 6 weeks after flight school.
What does that mean?
Well, the school didn't start until 6 weeks after I'd finished my flight training. Okay. So I had like 6 weeks of vacation time, basically, use up your leave time, or they put me on duty as a standby medevac pilot, which means you just went down and sat at the cafeteria and waited till the alarm went off, and you'd run out and jump in the left seat with somebody and take off and go pick up somebody on a highway or something. Well, the first day I went down there to do that, an old W4 saddled up beside me at the cafeteria, and we struck up a conversation. And he said, well, you got 6 weeks to kill. What are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm doing it. I'm just sitting around here waiting, He says, well, we've got a cancellation in the new Cobra school over here. Would you like to go to gunship school? I said, heck yeah, I'll take that, but I didn't want to jeopardize my Chinook class.
Okay.
And so he arranged it so I would do the Cobra school, which were just brand new aircraft at the time, come out. And then I finished Cobra school and I had 2 days, and then I started Chinook school. So I was really blessed that I had gotten both training. Not many pilots got that. Well, I went from there to I went on leave, I guess, after school. I had 2 weeks leave, and then we went over and caught the flight to Vietnam out of Fort Lewis. I got over there in it'd been in 68, I guess, early 68. And then I was given a choice to fly gunships or fly Chinooks. The base I was at in Phu Hep was had both. Well, shoot, I wanted to go kill people and blow up things, So I said, I'll take the gunships. Well, again, my whole goal was to get flight time.
Yeah.
And I got into gunships, but we'd go down there at 4 o'clock in the morning, pre-flight your aircraft, take off, go out and insert the troops in the field. Maybe take fire, maybe not, just shoot up the tree line to get the first troops on the ground. Then we go back and sit and wait. And wait for them to make contact. They didn't make contact. We waited to the end of the day, and maybe we go out and bring them back in, or maybe they'd be out there for 2 or 3 days or whatever. Then we go out and shoot up the LZ and they bring them back. So, you put in an 18-hour day and you maybe got 2 to 3 hours of flying time. That was not working for me. So I did that for about 3 months, I guess. And then that was pretty exciting. Some of the days were, but for the most part, I wasn't getting I wasn't even getting
Flight
60,
time.
60 hours of flying time a month.
Yeah.
And I needed 3,000. So I got to get busy here.
Yeah. What is
Well,
what's the
while
armoring?
while I'm sitting there waiting by my gunship, here comes these Chinooks flying in and out, and they
Yeah.
would fly the troops in, and I'm sitting there. Yeah, hey, So I went over to then our unit got orders to move down to Saigon area, 3 Corps, and so I ran over to the CO of the Chinook unit and said, "Hey, what's the chances, transferring over?" And he said, "Well, heck yeah, we're short pilots over here." So he called the personnel, and the next day I was over in the Chinook unit. So I started flying Chinooks, and right away, I mean, the average Chinook pilot got 1,000 hours over there.
Mhm.
Gunship pilots got about 600 to 800 hours. Huey pilots got anywhere from 12 to 1,500 hours normally. Huey pilots, I think, flew more than anybody.
Hmm.
Um, so anyway, I started flying hooks, and I guess that was about the second week. And when I was flying gunships, I get shot at, but I never got shot up. So I didn't think it was that big a deal. But anyway, I get in a Chinook, and Chinooks must be the safest aircraft over there, right? Because we fly in last and we fly out first
Mhm.
into the LZs and stuff. So we're big and we're vulnerable and we're very slow, and so you don't
For
expose
everybody listening, the Chinooks is
the
a big helicopter with
rotors on it.
two
Yeah,
rotors. They're the troop transport, I believe.
yeah,
And yeah, so right, you'd go in, clear out the LZ, and then the big
yeah.
slow one comes in, drops everybody off.
Yeah, we could take. Well, if we were carrying Vietnamese or Koreans, which we did quite a bit, we could fly 60 passengers internally. So they
Jesus.
could stack them in there. If you had American troops and they're fully loaded, we could guarantee 33 troops on the highest mountain in Vietnam. So, and on the hottest day. So, I mean, most of the time you could stick 45 or so in there if you had to. We didn't do that very often, but
Yeah.
when we did, it was guaranteed that we could usually do it unless the airplane was really, or the bird was really weak for some reason.
Yeah.
So I don't know, about the second weekend, we're on my first big combat assault in the Chinooks. I'll give you a war story. We were flying into what's called Happy Valley. It's up by On K. Big combat assault, about 40 Hueys and I don't know, there's 10 or 12 of us Chinooks. So we were inserting like 1,000 troops into 5 or 6 LZs up on the valley. And they'd made contact up in there, and it was called Happy Valley because the KIAs they were getting were on drugs, North Vietnamese and troops. And so, those guys would get high on drugs, and they weren't scared of you at all, So
Yeah.
they'd take you on. So Happy Valley was a badass place as far as flying in and out of it. It was right next, pretty much close to the Cambodian border, so it was easy to feed North Vietnamese troops into it. So on a combat assault, I'm the first Chinook in, but I'm the last, or I'm the first Chinook in, but I followed the last Huey in, and there was probably 15 Hueys ahead of us. We're all lined up maybe in a 5-mile trail, and the LZ just big enough to get a Chinook into, and maybe 2 Hueys. And the first Huey landed right on top of a booby trap, and I could see him out there. And he landed right on the booby trap, and he just went up and upside down and crashed right down the side of the mountain on the side of it. So the idea when that happens is the next helicopter lands exactly where he did.
Yeah, sure.
So it's the safest place. So they got everybody in. All the rest of the Hueys landed, and they got the crew out of the other aircraft. And then we were, the LZ's considered hot yet. So the Chinooks, we just did a slow orbit and came back around. And when I was the first one in, and I was still flying with an IP. I was with Clyde Love at the time, and he was a second tour Chinook pilot. So we come in, and I landed the aircraft. That was he was pretty much right there beside me, but he he was manning the radio. Normally one guy flies, the other guy mans the radios and keeps the eyes out and is talking to the crew in the back. So as I landed, we got a rear view mirror that's right up ahead so we can look back into the back. And I had a load of, I don't know, we figured probably about 40 Koreans. We don't really count them. They just load them up and you get on and you take off. And I got to looking in my rearview mirror, and we weren't there more than 2 or 3 seconds. They lower the ramp in the back, and the guys start running out the back as fast as you can get them out, because you don't want to sit in the LC very long because you're very vulnerable to mortar attack then. So they've got it zeroed in. So the third guy, second or third guy, I mean, he just lowered the ramp and they started running. I remember seeing that. And one of the troopers stepped right on another, which I found out later was a 105 howitzer round. Booby trap had been exploded, and that thing blew up. I remember seeing the explosion, and the rotor blades cut the aircraft right in half. We were sitting right on the cockpit. I was looking straight down the mountain in front of me, which was about a 60-degree slope. My front two wheels were sitting on the mountain, but if that's what really saved my life, the rotor blades cut the aircraft in half, and my forward end of the aircraft went rolling down the mountain away from the fire. We had 6,000 pounds of fuel on, but we just refueled, of course. And so we were fully loaded. And I think everybody in the back, we went rolling down and knocked me out and knocked my co-pilot out. When we came to a stop, I mean, I woke up, 15, 20 seconds later from concussion. And the aircraft was nose down, upside down. It took me a couple seconds to orient. I unbuckled and fell out. I pulled the fire handle or the emergency handle on the aircraft. The door fell off and I just rolled out on the ground. As I was rolling out, I looked back to see if my co-pilot was alive. Clyde, he was. He was wiggling, and I ran around to his side and got his door off and got him out. He'd been knocked unconscious too, and so we both kind of dazed. We knew the only way we was going to get out of there is to walk back up that mountain to where the LZ where we'd landed, because that's the aircraft were going to pick us up, would have picked us up there. So we probably 50, 60 yards back up that hill, which about killed you itself, trying to get back up that. We got back on the aircraft. We took back off. We jumped on a Huey that was there, and we went back to my base there in Ankei. And that was on a Sunday morning, probably about 8:00 when the aircraft happened, when the accident happened. And then by noon, Clyde and I were back in another Chinook flying back out on the mission again, flying artillery and ammunition out there. It's like, okay, another day.
Here we go. Just game time, game pace.
Yeah.
It's like, right? That's waking up hungover with your friends, and it's like, we're doing it again. Like, we're doing it again. It's
yeah. They brought another aircraft up and said, get going. So that's the way we did it. But I was thinking it was a lot safer flying in a Chinook than I would be in a gunship, but the opposite turned around right away. But that was the beginning of my journey.
So you said that mortar went off the booby trap, and you said, so what did it push the back rotor up, and that's what?
Yeah, well, it would have brought it up, but the rotor blade, the back 3 rotor blades would have just cut right through the aircraft. What happens?
Yeah.
And if there's any kind of a rise in the rear end of the aircraft that throws the balance off of those blades, it'll automatically cut. Now, sometimes it'll cut the aircraft in two. A lot of times it'll just slice through the fuselage.
Mm-hmm.
And your forward rotor blade, of course, is turning the opposite direction. So it wants to pull away from whatever the back end is doing. So that's how that went down that day.
How far down did it? How far was the drop or the fall or the roll or whatever?
Well, I said I was probably 40, 50 yards away from down the mountain. I don't know how many times I rolled over. I was unconscious at the time. But like I said, we ended up upside down like that, and rotor blades were all gone. Of course, everything had come apart. The cockpit was intact yet. So,
is there a near-death experience? Was it just adrenaline, or were you really you knocked out and woke up and it was like, where am I?
Well, it wasn't a near-death experience. I mean, you didn't even think about that. It was just too fast that
Yeah,
happened. I mean, when I saw that explosion, I thought, well, that's probably it. I don't remember a whole lot of that, but I do remember waking up and being worried about my co-pilot.
sure.
And then once he was okay, then it was, I got to get the heck out of here, because I don't want to be. My worst fear was getting caught in the ground by an
Absolutely.
NVA soldier and being POW.
Yeah, poor
I
thing.
always saved one bullet in my gun
Yeah. Well,
for the last one's going. I did not want to be a POW.
I had on Joe Tedeye, who is special forces and did paramilitary work, and he talked about an escape and evasion, a mission gone wrong in like the early 2000s in Iraq or something. And yeah, he said the guy he was with was a former Delta Force guy who had been in Mogadishu
Yeah,
and knew when things were going bad, and they were on hour 77 of escape and evade. And he said count your bullets and put one in your pocket, because like you said with the Viet Cong, he's like, hey, like they've debriefed, they've showed us the videos of what ISIS does, and they were like, save it for yourself.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's, yeah, but that's, yeah, no, that's what he said. It's like, you saved one. He was like, you're gonna get cooked alive in hot oil, like they're
Exactly.
animals. Yeah,
And if you survived all that, you're going to end up in a POW camp. And back then, those guys were up there for
years.
5, 6 years in a row.
And then if you get out of that, I mean,
Yeah,
what, PTSD for the rest of your life? Just
yeah.
so, yeah, climb up the mountain.
I had my mind made up.
Yeah,
I was not going to go down and
no,
get
yeah,
defeat and get captured. That was a fear I had. That was a realistic fear. But
yeah,
you're out there in it
yeah.
every day. You're exposed to it. So uh, the good thing is that well, I don't know, that a lot of good things. You're as a Chinook pilot, you're flying with a very experienced pilot for the first 6 months or so.
Mhm.
So they teach you all the tricks. You're just as worried about killing yourself and the aircraft and your crew by making some stupid mistake. You can overweigh the aircraft. You can have an emergency procedure and do it wrong
Yeah.
and screw up something. Uh, so you had these very experienced pilots that were pulling crap on you all the time. It was nothing at all. Reach down, pull an engine off on you. You had two in a Chinook.
Just to train you, just to,
Oh yeah, you got so you instinctively you
yeah,
did exactly what you had to do, and so you had a guy was always messing with you over there.
yeah,
You're always on your toes.
yeah. Keep you trained, keep you right, reflexive.
Yeah. The
Yeah,
fun thing is when you finally got experienced enough yourself, you
yeah.
became the aircraft commander, and you weren't supposed to mess with the guys as an aircraft commander, but as an IP, an instructor pilot, then you're authorized to pull engines and do all this stuff. Well, you get an old W4 who's not an IP and doesn't want to be one, but he knows his stuff. He's not worried about scaring you a little bit
Yeah,
and making you a better pilot for it.
yeah.
So
It's being the little brother and then becoming the older brother, right? You
exactly
don't dish it
right.
back out.
Yeah, yeah. The emergency procedures. I mean, I think I had every emergency you could possibly have in a Chinook except for a dual um,
Failure.
hydraulic failure. If you had that, uh, well, I think if you had a dual transmission failure, you're not going to survive that either. But a dual hydraulic failure in flight, your controls lock up. It takes, I think it's 6,000 pounds of pressure it takes to move
Yeah.
the cyclic or the collective. And if that locks up, you're just going to go
So is
in.
there any standard operating procedure for that? Is there it's like on a plane. The plane can be going 600 miles an hour, and they still tell you to like brace yourself, and it's like you're probably
Yeah.
going to be turned to vapor.
Yeah. Well, in the helicopter emergency book, it says if unable to maintain control of the aircraft,
Mhm.
exit.
Oh, of course.
In the helicopter, you don't even carry a parachute. So if unable to maintain flight, exit aircraft.
Oh, well, what? How silly of me to oversee that.
Reach it over and kiss it goodbye. Is basically what it was. Yeah,
Open,
yeah. That
open.
was the only one where it said that. Dual fire was a big one.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think I've ever heard of a Chinook having both engines on fire. I got pretty excited. Well, I don't know. You've interviewed Bill Albright.
Yes, sir.
When I went in, I don't know. You're pretty. How long ago did you do him? You remember
Month
his
ago.
story? You know,
Month ago.
that was yeah. He was. That was one of the more exciting months I had in Vietnam.
I imagine.
There was Bill. He about got my ass killed a couple times. And I kind of remind him of that every once in a while whenever I see him too.
Well, you should. It's yeah. It's for everybody
Yeah,
listening. It's Bill, the author of Escape from Firebase Kate. Yeah, he tells that story.
yeah, he got himself in a real fix out there, and I tell you, the only way he could get support was by helicopters.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it was early October of, when was that, 69, I guess it was. Our unit was one of four Chinook units, four Chinook units in the two corps area. And we were the closest one to Bamituit. So we ended up doing most of the Bamituit missions. And when they decided to set up Bu Prang and the three fire bases around that, our unit was the one that ended up carrying just about all the resupply out there from Bamituit, which was about a 40-minute flight out and 40-minute flight back. And so we carried all the supplies. There was no roads out there at all. It was all jungle and basically open fields. And so the only way you could get resupply out there. So and our unit sent four Chinooks out there, and we had four aircraft a day mission to fly 12 hours a day. So we were flying long hours and flying a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And then sometimes we got some help from some of the other Chinook units. So there was a lot of cargo going out there. Mostly, after we got the fire base built, that which was bulldozers and stuff like that to get the fire bases in, and then they sandbags and security and logs and lumber and concertina wire, all just ash and trash junk we took out there. They started setting up those fire bases, and then once the three fire bases, Susan, Ann, and Kate, were set up, and Bu Prang was kind of in the middle, and then there was three fire bases around it that supported the Bu Prang. And LZ Kate was the closest one to the border. It was only, it wasn't even a mile away probably from the Cambodian border. So they were the first ones that were going to get hit coming from the troops from the north. So our job with Chinooks, of course, resupply them. Anytime they'd fire artillery all night, and we'd go out there the next day and resupply them with artillery all day long with rounds, and then they'd fire them at night and during the day. And so it was artillery and small arms ammo and water, and you name it. Everything they needed had to depend on the Chinooks. Well, Bill went out there, I think on the 29th or something, and the day he got there, the day before, I went in and landed, sat down on the fire base, took a bunch of troops in there, sat there on the fire base on the LZ for probably a minute, unloading, loading stuff up, gotten stuff up. Not even worried about it. Nobody had taken fire. There was nothing around there. Pretty secure area. And then we'd fly either over to Bu Prang, drop them off, or drop them back to Bamituit or something. So he went into Firebase, and I say he was like a magnet. He dragged. It was the same day they decided they're going to overrun the Firebase, and they meaning the North Vietnamese. And I think what the numbers they counted afterwards is something like 6,000 troops were involved. That North Vietnamese troops were involved in that. And Bill had like 150 infantry that he was in charge of, and then there was like 35 to 50 artillery.
So it's Bill's
on base that were firing I think there was 3 guns on the base, if I remember right. But anyway, they were constantly running out of ammo. We just resupply them. So the day before, we're always listening to radio. Every time I fly back and forth to Bu Prang, I'd go right by Kate pretty much. And I was listening to Bill, the Hawk, I knew him as Chicken Hawk. And he was chattering all the time. And he was saying he was getting fired. He was getting this and getting that. And I'd fly by at 5,000 feet going by. I'd look down there and say, oh, the poor sucker. He's got his work cut out for him down there. And I'm thinking, he's got 35, 50 people trying to overrun the place. And we had no idea
But it
that
was
how
that.
serious the North Vietnamese were taking that base.
So Bill's just a bad luck magnet.
Yeah. Oh, he was. I mean, he just, it was the wrong time in the wrong place.
Why did you?
And he was the right man in the right place, because I don't think if it hadn't been him there and
Sure.
his NCO, that they'd all been killed. I have no doubt about that. But he was calling in. I mean, here for a little captain, he was calling in B-52s. He was calling in. I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Of course, he's just talking to a FAC,
Yeah.
and a FAC is the Air Force, the flight operations guy out there, little Cessna Cub. He's just flying out there. He's got radios that can talk to the world, and he can call in F4s and F100s, and actually called in a B-52 strike.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which was pretty amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. He said they had priority air support for all of Vietnam for that day.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think there was too much else going on around, but that was definitely the hottest spot in town.
So, yeah, nothing else was going on because everyone was there.
Yeah, yeah. And the sad thing was, I mean, the day before, which would have been the 30th, I guess, 2 gunships were out there from the 155th out of Bamituit, and they took. I mean, they were just coming around and shooting wherever Bill was telling them to, and firing up the place. And again, not realizing how many troops they got down there. They took some heavy duty. Well, Bill says it was a 37 millimeter quad gun. That's a heavy duty anti-aircraft gun, which I don't think I'd ever went up against one of them before that. And they'd shot down Huey. It was what was covering him. Captain Nor, he went in. I mean, according to Bill, he exploded in the sky before he even hit the ground. They were gone. So I heard that chatter, and of course every helicopter and pilot now is alert. There's anti-aircraft guns on the ground in the air, LZK area. Stay well away from that area. Except if you get a little phone call around the radio, it says, "Hey, we need some help in here."
I'm not going there. Well, that's actually exactly where I need you to be.
Yeah, exactly where I want you, because I'm running out of ammo and I'm running out of water.
He did a.
I had resupplied Boo Prang all day long that day.
Yeah.
And was listening to stuff, and I'm watching all these aircraft coming in and blowing the crap out of this place.
Yeah.
And as I'm leaving, I always climbed up to 1,500, 1,800 feet, so I'm well away from ground fire. And I'm seeing all this smoke and dust and dirt over there. I'm thinking, jeepers, what the heck is going on? So I finished carrying all my loads to Boo Prang, and so I fly back to Bamituit, and I'm refueling. I'm going to shut down for the night, and the tower comes up on the radio and says, "Hey, freight train 1-1, you got a tactical nuke, call or TAC-X." He said, "What TAC-X meant? This emergency."
Oh, I thought you were saying tactical nuke.
Yeah, well, not nuke. That's what we call them now.
Oh, I was about to say. I was like,
"Ooh." That was a TAC-X. That was a tactical emergency, is what it was. And if you got that call, you dropped everything and you took orders.
Run, yeah.
So I had to call this frequency. So I called the frequency, and it was the FAC. And he says, "Hey, I got to have you out here right now because these guys are running out." He says, "This is big time emergency." And I remember my instinct was to reach down, just shut the radio off, because I knew this was going to be bad stuff,
Yeah.
So I responded to it. I called the frequency, and I called the guy out, and he said, "You got to we got to get some ammunition into these guys." And I said, "Well, what's the situation out there? I've been listening to that all day." And he said, "Well, I think we've got it all calmed down." He says, I don't think you're going to encounter too much out there." He said, "But I'll have the gunships covering you when you go in." And I said, "Well, I appreciate that." So on the way out there, I got our gunners to, we just don't normally as Chinook door gunners don't have a lot to do, because they don't get to shoot that much because we're going in after it's safe and we're leaving before it gets hot. So I had them all line up the ammunition all the way down the belts on the floor. I said, if we go in, we're going in hot. And we're going to probably need as many bullets you can go going in and coming out of there. And so we lined them up and we went out to Buprang and we picked up, it was probably 9,000 pounds of ammunition, artillery, and it would have been water and small arms ammunition. And it was about I don't know if I remember right, it was like a 5-6 minute flight from Buprang over to Cape. So I picked them up and from Buprang and we started toward Cape, and I called Hawk up and I said, hey, I'm inbound. What's your situation there? He says, well, it's pretty calm. We haven't taken anything in the last half an hour or so. Last half an hour, right? He said, yeah, the F-100s, they've been, and the F-4s, they've been dropping napalm and everything else out there. And I figured, well, yeah, that's about as safe as it's going to get.
Yeah.
And I went back to the FAC on the radio, and he said, well, I've got 4 gunships here. We'll put 2 on each side, and we'll escort you in. So I came in low level from the southwest side of the LZ, and it's about 4.5 minutes. It's just starting to get dark. So I come in there as hot as I could fly it. And I had the co-pilot flying with me, and I had an experienced co-pilot with me that day. The day before, I had a brand new guy, and I knew if I was going to fly out there in that area, I needed somebody over there and the right that knew it if I got hit, that could get the aircraft and the crew out of there, and knew his way back to where the safety zones were. So he got in, and we were, I don't know, we're about 200 yards final. And the gunships opened up. I mean, they just sprayed all over in front of us. And just if anybody's down there is stupid enough to stick their head out, they're dead. So we went in, and I came into a hover, and I dropped the sling load, and I moved. Well, it was a piggyback. I had water buffalo on the bottom and a ammunition on the top of it. And you always put the lightest load on the bottom so it'll swing back and hold the ammunition so it doesn't come up and hit the belly of the aircraft when you're coming in at an excessive speed. So that's another thing you had to be really careful about. So I put the water trailer down on the ground, and then I hovered over and dropped the ammunition on the ground. And then I just sucked in power. And I mean, I climbed out there with every ounce of power that I had. And didn't take a single round. I thought, what the heck is the problem here, Bill?
Yeah, it's because Bill's a magnet. They're all going at him. They don't care.
I thought, well, it's not as hot. They must have gotten them all already, so I'm not doing that. Well, I'm climbing through about 500 feet, and I'm in about a 90-degree bank to the right because I want to look down and see what's going on down there. And my door gunner comes on the radio, and he says, sir, they just hit that round with a mortar. That load we just dropped, they hit with a mortar. So here you got, 6,000 plus pounds of ammunition cooking off in the LZ.
Blowing up.
And of course, he's got no ammo because he just got blew up or what he had, Lucky that his water, and he says this in the book, the water buffalo fell in one of the trenches they dug out.
Yeah.
And so they had water. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made it through the next day.
His book, he says he still remembers that thirst. He said it was inexplicable. He said he was more scared of not getting water than he was of dying.
Yeah, I think so.
So when you come in and you drop it, how fast can you be?
You're coming in. Well, with a normal load, you can get about 60 to 80 knots of ammunition underneath you, as long as there's like we always say a 40-foot strap. So the load is hanging 40 feet below you. Okay. The problem when you got to load that high is you got to come to a dead stop and then drop down and let the load off, and then you pickle it from the hook inside. So as you're coming in the LZ, you're probably 60 to 80 knots, and you get about 100, 200 yards out or meters out. You flare the aircraft, so you're slowing the aircraft down the last 30 seconds or so to a complete stop. So you got to bring it in. And if you go over, it's real easy for that load to swing underneath you, and you go right on by where you want to drop it. So you got to get to a complete stop using the belly of the aircraft to flare, basically, when you're doing a high speed approach. But normally you come in slow and crew chief's in the back and he's telling you how high the load is off the ground. He'll tell you you're 50, try to aim to 15 feet above the ground, and then he talks you down to the ground with the last 15 feet or so. You don't want to drop it because you could bust it open stuff or dent your water bottle, your big water buffalo up or something.
Yeah.
What you want to be able to do is pick it back up the next day and reuse it. So if you damage it, you can't, you screw it all up. So a good pilot will drop it softly and reuse that baby.
Down, yeah.
So that was the idea. And you know, at the first time in there, I didn't, you know, I figured we were pretty safe. You know, they'd shot up everything around there, and you know, we probably got all 50 of them, and we were okay. You know.
Yeah. And this is.
It turns out there's about 3,000 of them down there. You know? And they were dug in pretty deep, so they hadn't got a whole lot of them. So anyway, I take back off and in that steep bank, and we see the load explode down below down there, and it's just dead silence in the cockpit. And the gunship pilots come on and they asked me if I was all right, and I said, "Yeah, we're fine." But I said, "What's going on down there?" And he says, "Oh, shoot, you know, ammunition flying everywhere." He said, "I don't know what's coming in or going out." He said, "But we're a bingo on our fuel. We've got to get back and refuel too." So we all headed back to Manitowoc. Well, on the way back, FAC comes on and says, "Can you try that again?"
He's taking fire from the Viet Cong, and now he's kind of taking it from you guys because you're dropping it in there and they're hitting it with mortars. And
yeah. And I'm thinking, man, I just need to turn this radio off and go home.
Off and be like, "Oh, I didn't hear anything. I'm sorry."
But you're thinking, well, poor Bill, he's down there.
Yeah.
You know, all those guys are sitting there and they're depending on you to get in there. And of course, you're instructed from day one in flight school that your job is to support that ground troop.
Yeah, you're the guardian angel. You have
exactly. They got no other help except you, so you really you have to step up, you know. So it was one of those days where I had to step up. So we went back and refueled, and he said, "Well, we're going to call in a bunch more, drop a bunch more on here bombs, and see if we can't soften up the target a little bit." So we went back and refueled, and I headed back out and called over to Bu Prang and said, "Have you got a road ready?" He said, "No." I said, "We're not ready yet." So I had to stall about 30 minutes, just orbiting out there, and they called me in, and I finally picked up the second load. And again, we said our prayers because we know this time it's going to be super hot coming in there because they're expecting us this time. The first time we snuck in on them, and second time that wasn't going to happen. They heard our aircraft coming. You don't sneak in with a Chinook. It's just too much noise, you know.
Yeah. Is there ever anything like I'm just thinking of like C5s or something, you know, or whatever, pushing it out the back with a big parachute. Is that ever a tactic with Chinooks? No.
That we never ever practice that. I think you can do it now. I know.
Yeah.
You put a small drogue chute out and they slide out the back. But basically, that's an Air Force mission.
Okay.
130s will do it, you know, quite often. C5, C-17s, they'll do it, but very seldom you ever see a Chinook doing the mission. It's just, you know, our job's come in, pick stuff up on the ground or drop stuff right where you need it.
Sure.
Coming down a chute, you don't know where it's going to land. You know, you get a pretty good idea, but we're supposed to pinpoint stuff, you know. Yeah. That's more what our speed is. Well, anyway, second time in, I mean, it's going to get as real as it's going to get. We knew that. And so I instructed my co-pilot. I said, "Do you fly the aircraft this time?" I'm going to fly the aircraft this time. He flew it the first time going in. I was going to fly it this time. You man the radios, and I'm talking to the crew, and you know, your only focus is, as the pilot, you're just focused on that LZ, the aircraft, and safety of the crew and getting it in there. He's on the radio, is talking to the gunship pilots, talking to Hawk, and talking to the FAC, and finding out, you know, the whole tactical situation. He's in charge of that. I shut his radios off because there was so much traffic on there, and I have to listen my flight engineers and my door gunners in the back because they're talking me in. If there's anything that's hazardous or in the way, or I've got he's over the guy, our flight engineer, he lays over the top of the hole. The hole is right in the middle of the aircraft on the bottom. That's where the hook is underneath. Mm-hmm. And he's in charge of that hook. I mean, the pilot pickles the hook. He'll tell you when the load is on the ground, and then you have the load. He doesn't pickle it unless you tell him to. Mm-hmm. He can do it. If there's a problem with the hook doesn't open or something, then he's in charge of that back there. So we'd talk about what we're going to do if we get emergency, if one of us is shot or somebody in there. We talked all the way through all these emergency things, and again we lined up the ammunition, and on the way in, we told Talk I'm coming in a different direction this time. They'll know where our path last time. They'll be ready for us there. So we came in from the southwest corner and dropped it on the east side of that LZ Kate, and that's where the normal pad was. I said, we're going to shoot for the left side and throw me a smoke out there so I can see how much wind we got coming in there. And by now it's almost completely dark.
Yeah.
So that was going to help me as far as visibility. We had all the lights off. The gunship pilots came in. I had 2 Cobras on the right side this time. First time I had 4 Hueys, Huey gunships, Charlie models. And then the second time I go in, I had 2 Cobras, which have a lot more firepower. Mm-hmm. And that's where I took most of the fire from, was from the right side. And then on the left side, we had the Charlie model gunships, and they were from the 92nd Falcons. So I had the Pink Panthers, which were the call sign for the black, or for the Cobras, and the Falcons were the black, or the C model Hueys. Mm-hmm. So for half a mile out, I popped up over the mountain. I mean, we came in below the ridge line, so they wouldn't have seen us coming or which direction we were coming from. And I mean, I've got my ammunition load in the water right like this far above the trees. I'm just barely skimming. I'm worried about me hooking the load in the tree and just pulling me down,
At least it'd be over quick.
Yeah. 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 But I'm right in the middle of them when I do it. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Territory.
We're all going to die someday, right?
That's It's like, hey man, it's like it goes when it goes. It's like you got to look around. It's like we're flying above the canopy in Vietnam. Like we're all going one day. Like,
yeah.
Obviously, I say that as a 30-year-old with no military experience. It's very easy for me to say that, but
I was 19 at the time, so I mean, it's like I'm just as crazy.
So you're invincible, right? It's impossible to die.
I'm bulletproof, and nothing's going to happen to me.
I'll fly through the windshield. I'll fall.
I'll be fine.
I'll fall 1,000 feet. I'll get hit with some AA fire. I'll brush it off.
It's all good. It's all good. So anyway, short final. I mean, he's, like I said, he's on the radio. So I'm focused. I'm just looking straight at the LZ in front of me. And all of a sudden I see these big tracers coming at me from both sides of the LZ. And I mean, these are size of basketballs, it looks like. In your mind, that's what you see coming at you. Holy smoke. And
you can swear. Holy shit.
3-second burst.
Yeah.
They were going right by me. Bam, bam, bam. I hear them hit the aircraft. It's like a baseball bat, just blam, blam, blam. And I see the gunships. They just zeroed in on those big guns, both sides, and they were done. And then all the little tracers started coming at me, and now I'm less than a quarter mile final now, and I'm less than 100 feet off the ground, and I'm in a big flare now just to get that thing stopped. And we said ahead of time, if we can't hover, we're just going to pickle it. We're just going to get right over the LZ, pickle it, so at least they got the ammunition on the ground. The box is busted open, and they're not going to care at the moment.
Yeah,
so it might be better to spread the ammunition all over. They could get it anyway. But and I don't think we had any artillery ammunition then. All we had was the small arms, because I think all their guns had already been destroyed.
Of course.
The 300 they had.
To rewind real quick, so when the big tracers come by and then the gunships take those out, is there like an equal fear with the smaller arms fire, or is it?
Yeah, you're scared to death any of them. Okay. I mean the 50 cals or 37s, whatever they were. I think there was one was a 50, because Bill said afterwards there was when they were leaving out that night, they had a 50 caliber shooting over their heads.
Oh yeah. He talked to last on Monday. So week ago yesterday, or whatever it was, about a week ago. I actually fired a full auto Mod Deuce.
Oh,
Was
good for you.
Oh
Yeah.
man, that
Cool.
thing was going through the
Yeah,
tree line.
rush, isn't it?
That thing was going through the tree line like butter. I was like, oh wow, I can watch the tracer. And the guy was like, yeah, dude, that's going through like thick woods. That's what
Yeah.
it's doing is
Yeah.
it's going through trees. And I was like,
Yeah. And you imagine a minigun with 6 of those barrels shooting 6,000 rounds a minute. It just cuts a tree down like it's a
yeah,
lawnmower,
yeah, just I mean, it's like a scythe. You're just just
It's very violent. And if there's, well, like I said, there's nothing but hair, teeth, and eyeballs. Anybody gets in front of those rounds.
hair.
It's
I've never heard nothing but hair, teeth, and eyeballs. Good
yeah,
lord.
yeah. It's just butcher. But anyway, we're short final. I can't hear the radios, but the pilots are from the gunships are screaming at him, abort, abort, abort. They want to get the heck out of there. Well, I didn't hear that, so I'm just cruising around there because I'm going to get that ammo on the ground. By
Yeah.
God, I'm going to get in there. Well, I remember beep 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 in my earphone, so I know I got an emergency of some kind because that's a warning. It's in there now, but I'm not looking at my caution lights yet because I got to get this load on the ground. Well, then I see there's a little light right in front of you that tells you when the hook opens, and I'm in an attitude with my nose high, and I see that light come on. I thought, what the heck? My first impression was strap must have been hit with a bullet or something and broke the load, and my co-pilot starts yelling at me now, abort, 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 that's 50 cal down there. He says, I punched the load. And by now and just right after that, intercom goes out, right? So we go running over the LZ. And as Bill said in the book, he says it's the first time he's seen a U.S. aircraft resupply the North Vietnamese because
Oh yeah.
the load hits the side of the hill, and it's a pretty steep hill, hit the side of that hill and then just rolled right on down right into the North Vietnamese hands. Here's all this ammunition. Of course,
You're gonna be tried for treason.
they can use our ammo. We can't use theirs. I mean,
Yeah.
their AK-47 will fire an
Really?
yeah, it's just they're one caliber above ours, so they can
760.
fire a smaller caliber round
Okay.
than what we can shoot. So, like they have a 51 caliber, we have a 50 cal
Uh-huh.
round. The NATO round is ours a 50. They shoot a 51, so
That's
they can use our ammo, but we can't use theirs. Pretty smart on
that's
our
brilliant. Well, then we need
Russians
52
fight
too.
anyway.
We need
Same way
52
with
caliber.
the M14 round is a 7.76, and I think what's the AK-47 5.57
Five,
versus
five, five,
0.5
556, 55762. It's
somewhere in there. Anyway, our round will fit theirs, but theirs will fit ours. Anyway, we resupplied the North Vietnamese Army. So I mean, this time I just nosed the aircraft over because I'm thinking we're going to crash. They're going to shoot it down right here. My thinking was, so we just low leveled straight ahead and got the heck out of there. And we get back. I mean, my thinking I'm going to just crash in the LZ far away from this thing as I can get, and we'll get out and we'll set up the perimeter, and hopefully a Huey will pick us up, get us out of there. Well, the aircraft kept flying. I heard this. So we took a big hole. We had a big hole that big around through our rotor blade, and that thing was every time he'd come around, it would whistle. So I knew where, and if you take bullets through rotor blades, you got a serious problem because if the rotor blade can disintegrate depending on how bad a hole it is. The bullet comes through at an angle, it can rip a hole that long, and pretty big, and your blade can disintegrate. Well, Chinook was pretty wide, and the main spar that goes down through it was where that bullet went right through the main spar of that.
spar.
One bullet.
What's the
One
spar?
bullet. Well, it's like it's the main frame of the blade.
Okay.
Everything is
All the
structured
weight
off
is
of
on
that main block. So it's like a big. It's not steel. It's probably titanium or something lightweight.
main load bearing.
Yeah, and then you got the aileron effect around it.
Sure.
On the net. So
Let's
it's
do that.
you bend that, you bend everything, you know.
Oh,
So
Jesus.
it's collapsed. So we were very fortunate to have gotten out of there, you know, on that event. And then let's see what happened. We went back, landed, checked the aircraft out, and thought, well, it'll fly, it'll be okay. We did not want to stay in Buprang for the night because the aircraft would have been mortared, rocketed. They were getting hit every night. So I called in. They said, no, it'll fly to get it out of there because it'll save the aircraft anyway. So we flew back to Bambi-Tuet that night. And then they brought a new one out for us the next day. Right back at it again, you know. But during that night, it was that next night then that they E&E'd out of that place. So there was no more aircraft. I mean, nobody was allowed to fly in there, being they had the 37 quad 37s there because they would
Now,
take a lot with them.
is there any like conscious evasion when you're flying? And again, asking as someone with a biology degree that's fired a gun a handful of times in my life, so I have stupid questions. But when you're going in, and it's, you know, my first thought goes to something like a fighter jet with like a SAM sight, right? It's, you always, you know, evade flares. When you're going in with a CH-47 and you see the AA fire, the tracers, is there any like tactical maneuver, or is it just kind of like you pray that it misses?
Yeah. Well, I had gunship cover, so
Okay.
I'll leave it up to them to suppress the fire. And you got door gunners that can shoot toward
Sure.
whatever firing at you. In
Sure.
this case, with so many people shooting at it, they were just coming from everywhere.
Yeah.
Normally, you just have one or two snipers or something firing at you, or somebody jumps out behind a tree with a AK-47 and shoots a clip at you, you know,
Yeah.
full magazine, and they fire around. So you see tracers and then it just disappears, and hopefully your gunner puts him down before you get in there. Very seldom in a Chinook did that happen.
Yeah.
When it did, you had one or two choices. One, you don't fly straight into it like you do a gunship, where you got it, you're am. You take evasive action. In other words, you turn your belly to the thing. You've just made a bigger target for him to hit.
Yeah.
You know, so you basically try to do a pedal turn and you get away from wherever the area it is you're going into.
Yeah.
It's got the fire going on. 99% of the time I got hit, it was by sniper fire.
Okay.
Just some single guy sitting in a tree,
Hot shots.
or a squad out there somewhere, and you surprise them and they just opened up on you. So you maybe take 3 or 4 or 5 rounds at a time from one burst, and then he'd take cover. You know.
Now, will small arms fire? And you'll have to excuse me for continually interrupting you. I've just got a lot of stupid questions. Small arms fire now is it, you know, it's kind of, I think it was Mike Durant said in his book, Big Sky, Little Bullet. Does it hit you? Does it just kind of tinker? Is it, you know, tink, 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 or will those go through will those hit you? Could those hit you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. If they came through the cockpit, of course, all you got is plexiglass in front of you. There's no bulletproof anything in front of you.
Okay.
You're sitting on an armored seat. So if they shot from underneath directly into the seat, they could bruise your rear end, but you wouldn't get you. You had plates on both sides of you.
Yeah.
And then you wore they come up to about right here.
Armor.
You'd slide them down if you weren't taking fire. You know, if you knew you were going to take some, you'd bring them up a little bit. So you crouch down in behind them, you know, but you still had your cyclic down here, which this down here below your knees was exposed. But you had your seat. If you got shot from behind in the cockpit, it was the safest place. If you fly over them and they shoot at you from behind, the pilots were protected from the back because you sat in a bulletproof seat that had plates here and plates on the side.
Yeah. Okay.
So you had that. And then you wore a
flak
chest plate,
yeah.
which was, you know, it wouldn't stop a 50, but it would stop a AK-47 round.
Okay.
Hurt like heck, but it would, you know, it was saying there was quite a few pilots took rounds through the
founder of
got hit in the chest. We had one of our pilots in our unit where the armor plate on the side, he had his chest plate on, the bullet. If it had been an inch higher or an inch lower, it would have hit an armor plate, but it didn't. It went right straight through bounced off the right side, went clear up, and the bullet came out up here. And he lived. He lived to
Oh,
talk about it. Yeah, Dave Carriger was his name.
that's like,
Yeah, he lived to talk about it. The guys in the back, though, all they had was the bulletproof chest plate that they wore. Now, if you're going into a hot LZ, they'd say sometimes pull extra chest plates around them
yeah.
and get behind their machine gun, but they do it. But the guy on the floor laying down over that hole, he put 2 or 3 of them on the floor and then lay on top of them, you know. And if the bullets were coming from underneath, he was fairly safe. I mean,
Yeah.
he could take a hit. But you know, of all the pilots, of all the crew members, he was probably the most safe of anybody.
Now, would they ever lay down flat? Because so you're
Yeah,
like
they are. They're laid down flat on the floor, looking down through that hole.
hit your plate, yeah. Because right, if you're sitting up, it could go through your, your
Right,
butt or your legs, go
right,
right up through your
right.
body, destroy your organs.
With a Chinook, I mean, most of the hits came from the front. When you're coming in, you're very slow. I mean, you're under 10 knots the last 30 seconds or so. You're really slowed down. And as big as that target is, and he just step up behind a tree and won't nail you, and then you go back in.
Yeah.
I mean, I just can't believe, the good Lord was with me the whole time I was over there. So many times where if I'd have been an inch taller or an inch shorter, I'd have gotten nailed right in the head.
I mean, Paul, who is it?
We had the shortest guy in the unit was 5'2", Dale Tate, and he was just a little squirt, but he was pretty experienced by the time I got him. And I got him for his last 25 hours before he became aircraft commander. So I drill him a lot in tactics and all that, make sure he knows his stuff and that and the radios, and he knows all the emergency procedures by himself, and that he's safe with the airplane. He knows how to talk to the crew, and he knows how to work with a younger pilot that's going to, I'd sit over there and just act stupid all the time, try to make every mistake that he would get from an inexperienced co-pilot. Yeah. And his job was to correct me and tell me what I was doing wrong and why I'm doing it that way. So he was going that way. Well, we swapped seats. I was in the right seat. He was in the left seat. So he's sitting on the left side, which is where the aircraft commander normally sat. And he's like 5'2". He used to put a 4x4 block on the pedals with a big inner tube cut that had a big rubber band that would hold the 4x4 on the pedal so he could reach it. He'd pull the seat all the way up. He couldn't reach the pedals because his feet were too short. It's funny.
Oh my God. So
anyway, he's sitting in there, and of course he's got the seat all the way forward. He's got his feet on the pedals. He can barely see up over the windshield hardly. That's being a little bit facetious. Yeah. Over big, I'm 6'2". So I can sit in there plenty comfortable, and I'd hunch down in there, Yeah. He was up there like this, so he could see where the heck he was doing. Yeah. We're flying along, fat, dumb, and happy, coming to an LZ one time, bam, that bullet comes right through the windshield, just splits his helmet right above his head. If I'd have been me sitting there, I'd have taken it probably right there.
No.
And it just happened to be his day to sit on that seat that day, and that was a close.
Did he survive?
Was a close one I had. There's lots of times where if I'd have been a second sooner or a second later or an inch taller, like I said, or if I'd have turned left instead of turned right, been a lot.
Did he survive?
Story for me coming home,
Did he survive?
Yeah.
Okay. So it split the helmet. Okay. I was like,
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, he was fine. Scared the bejesus out of him.
Yeah. Well, it's like Paul was a whoever the actual author of All Quiet on the Western Front. Well, he talked about that with World War I. He was like, he gets to a point where you realize it's like there's nothing you can do to survive. It almost seems like fate. He talks. This happened to Hitler in World War I. They would talk about leaving their little dugout to go to the restroom in the behind the tree line, and you come back and it's been blown up by an artillery shell, and you see your friend's body pieces around, and it's just like, what if I hadn't gone to the bathroom? And it's at a certain point, it almost just seems like it's just a toss of the coin.
Yeah, you could write books on people that have been there. I've been tempted to just make a whole chapter in a book sometimes of the what ifs. If I'd have just done this, I would be here.
Yeah.
I got a good friend of mine that was in 9/11 at the Pentagon, and he never drinks coffee, but that morning he drank a couple cups of coffee and he had to go to the bathroom. So he goes down the hallway to go to the bathroom, and that aircraft hit dead center where his desk was. He came out of the bathroom just as the aircraft hit, and of course the fireball come rolling down and knocked him to the ground. And he was 60% of his body was burned.
Sure.
Yeah. But if it hadn't been, he fell right underneath a sprinkler system. And that's a guy you ought to talk to sometime. I'll give you Brian Birdwell's.
You think you can get him on here?
Yeah, I'll get you. I'm sure he'd agree to talk to you.
Let's do it.
That'd be a great guy for you to talk to because he can tell you.
Let's do it. Please do.
If you've ever talked to anybody that was in the Pentagon, that
I have not. I have not.
But he fell on the ground, knocked unconscious, but the sprinkler was right above him and soaked his body. Otherwise, he would
have been burned. Yeah.
Well,
I'm gonna write down his name, and I'm gonna text you after this. What's his name?
Yeah, Brian Birdwell.
Birdwell. Okay. I just want to make.
If you Google him, you'll probably get him. He's written a book about it.
Okay.
And he's a Texas state senator or congressman. I mean, so it'd be the same guy.
Okay.
He retired after that, of course, and then he moved to Texas, and he ran for Congress, and he's a state legislator down there. I think he still is. I haven't talked to him in a couple of years now, but that's what he was doing. Anyway, Vietnam was. I came back from. Let's see, I've been in January '71. Yeah, January '71 when I came.
50 years.
Yeah, 50 years this year.
What day? Do you remember what?
Last week. No, well, I think it was around the 3rd or the 4th. I missed the football game, the bowl games. Ticked me off. I was actually in Australia. I took my last R&R and went to Australia. That's where I met my wife down there on R&R.
Oh yeah.
But I left there on like the 28th of December. I wanted to get back to the United States for the bowl game because my brother lived in Los Angeles. And I called him from Australia. He says, well, you get back here. He says, I got tickets. We'll go to the Rose Bowl parade and we'll go to the game. Yeah. Well, that'd be great. So I get back to Vietnam like the 29th or something of December. And I had to wait like 5 or 6 days before I could get a flight out of Cam Bay to get. So I missed it all when I come back. So that was really good.
Bastards.
Yeah.
It's. I was going to say, so let's save the White House communications for tomorrow. And this is more wild, speculative. Are you free to keep talking for a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, I got all afternoon.
Then I'm gonna run to the restroom again real quick. If you got to go, you can go. It doesn't matter.
I'll go too while you're doing it.
All right, that's another hallmark of this podcast is it's technical difficulties and bathroom breaks.
You need a piss tube right there in front of you.
That's what everyone says. Is I need to get one of those astronaut diapers. We'll be right back.
All right.
never back. Um,
So where are you physically sitting at? You're at your house, I assume, or not? You have
yes,
an office in
I'm in Ocean City, Maryland.
Maryland. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, very long story. I graduated the University of Georgia in 2013, got into medical school, decided I didn't want to go. Not long after I graduated, I lost my oldest sibling to suicide, and I kind of just went, I think understandably, I kind of went a little crazy for a couple of years. And my parents live up here. I moved home, try to sort my life out. And December 2019, started this podcast, and it's been about 13 months, actually, 13 months to the day, December 12th. And yeah, been doing this, and I like where it's going. It's building fast. It's exponential. It's, getting guests early on was difficult, but now it's, shout out to Ken Moffat, has got me a ton of guests. But it turns into now when I have people on, I'm just like, hey, if you know anyone interesting, please tell them to come. Like anyone, if you can, if you can probably tell, I can just talk to people. So
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah. You're easy to talk to.
yeah. So it's, I
Well, who is your main audience then? Just people like yourselves, or
have no idea.
well, really,
Yeah.
you don't get any response, huh?
I mean, you can look up like demographics on stuff, but even that is only like who enters their inform. So, like, let's say like where like the podcast is hosted, where it's just audio, for instance, that will tell me that like 80% of my audience is white males in North America between 18 and 45, but that's like the drunk man looking for his glasses under the streetlight. That's only of people who enter their information. I have no idea how many people just watch and are watching it anonymously. So I don't know. I just talk to people that I'm interested in, and it's, yeah. There's no specific topic. There's no
Yeah. So
whatever.
do you make money through advertising or something or through it, or how do you?
Right now, I am making some money. Yeah, I reached out to, well, not reached out, I made a video asking if anyone wanted to invest in it. I was like, hey, I don't know when this will make money. Because YouTube, because my channel is, I have an American flag and I have a bunch of veterans on and I talk about things like America being good. YouTube does not like that because they're a bunch of dirty communists. So I figured early on, I was like, I'm probably not going to get ad money through them. But I do know that when I put my mind to things, I succeed. And so I just made a video and I was like, hey, does anyone want to invest in this? Like when I put my mind to things, I do it, whether it's getting into medical school. It's after my brother died, I started a charity to raise money for mental health. I raised like 15,000 in a year. It's so it's basically like, hey, will someone give me some money so I can, cover living expenses? Because I was working at a liquor store and it's like I could only do so many podcasts when I'm working all the time. Somebody who has the funds took me up on it, and then it's a reasonable amount, and they're gonna fund it for 3 years and see where it goes. So right now, that's where I am, and it's kind of a beautiful thing because now that there's an external source, I don't have to rely on YouTube, because a lot of YouTube people out there will be like, hey, I want to talk about, you know, the evils of China or terrorism, but I'm scared of getting my money yanked. Well, I've kind of been able to remove that factor now. So I'm free to talk about whatever I want. And I like that. Where it's going to go, I mean, early on, I put I put a lot of work into it to get it going, but now it's slowly taking on its own life. Like I don't entirely know where it's going. It seems like I very slowly feel like I'm moving into the passenger seat, and I just put a cement or a cinder block on the gas pedal, and now I'm like, let's see where this thing goes. Like it's, you know,
Well, you get the interesting people. I mean, that's the whole key to your success, probably, is getting
yeah,
topics and people that
yeah,
people want to listen to, and then
yeah.
pick up on. So
That's what I figure is just find anyone, like you said, that guy in the Pentagon. I'm like, there's a story right there. Just
yeah, well,
yeah,
you're going to have me listening to you all the time now.
yes, yes. That's
Do you know how many people are listening to you then every day? You said you had.
on YouTube. It's subscribe, so people that like, they'll get a notification when a video comes up. It's 1,850, and
Oh, you're doing good then.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's been going up exponentially. It took about 9 months to get to 500, and it's taken another 3 months to almost triple that.
Yeah,
So
once you light the fire and start to.
yeah. But it's also YouTube. YouTube censors a lot. That's why Joe Rogan left and went to Spotify. So
As I said, are you thinking about jumping ship to another network or
I don't think it's a matter of me jumping ship as so much as it's
getting kicked off?
they're gonna kick me off, right? It's not, yeah, it's not, it's not jump out of the helicopter. It's being thrown out of the helicopter,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
fine with me because I've got it uploaded on other websites, Rumble, BitChute, Vimeo, all these other video hosting websites.
good.
I have it on external hard drives, multiple locations. My logic is, hey, they'll take me down, but I'll just pop up somewhere else. I'll just play whack-a-mole.
Yeah,
I'm,
yeah.
I'm gonna I'm gonna be a thorn in their
Yeah,
side. That's my logic. So yeah, and I know there are people that like these stories. They're interesting stories. They're interesting people, right?
mhm.
It's not every day someone gets to. And another thing that I think goes for me is the reason why I don't prepare questions or send you like a set of bullet points beforehand is because my logic is if you're on a plane or you're in the sauna at the gym or whatever and you just strike up a conversation, you don't have questions prepared. So just say you and I meet at Walmart and we start talking. Oh, you flew? That's awesome. Helicopters. And we get. This is what the conversation's like. You have someone that's never been in the military, so I ask stupid questions. I'm like, do the bullets punch through or whatever? And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think the majority of my listeners, because I have on such a wide array of guests, they kind of it almost I've been told that it feels like they're vicariously interviewing because it's so simple. It's like, so what happens next, right? Because, and it's so if I have on someone who's an author or a painter or a pilot or Delta Force, I kind of ask the same, stupid, silly questions that I think anyone would ask, right? Because I don't know the first thing. I'm 30 years old. I have no idea what it's like to fly CH-47s right above the canopy in Vietnam. So of course I'm like, what do you do next?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
I just try to make it, I just try to make it real.
Well, a lot of people are, I don't know, I find once, you're in a conversation and you say, well, you're a Vietnam veteran. Well, okay. And that ends the conversation. They're one or two things. They're scared to talk to you about it because they're going to stir up emotions in you that they don't want to stir up, or two, they just don't give a crap, and they're not, they don't care and they're not interested.
Yeah, because
So,
they're dirty. They're dirty communists who are ungrateful for this
well,
country.
either that or they're just ignorant and want to choose to remain that way. They have,
Yeah,
well, out here in Nebraska, especially, you're a long ways from military or understanding of what that lifestyle is like or what, they know how to shoot guns and deer around here.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And they're pretty darn good farmers.
yeah, yeah.
We
It's
used to know how to play football, but other than that, it's pretty boring.
that's well. You guys have right. Well, you guys are one of the states. You guys have a lot of ICBM silos,
Well,
right?
we used to. Well, we used to, and there's not as many anymore. I'm not sure how many's left. They're all out in the western end of the state now. They used to be all over. I mean, Omaha at Offutt,
Mhm.
that was
Strategic
there,
Air Command. Yeah,
there
Kurt.
was probably 50, 60 of them around there at one time. I don't think there's any left there now.
Yeah,
The ones that are left are the ones out in the west end of the state, and they're under Warren Air Force Base out there. The salt agreements cut those down to, I think we're like 600 of them left or something from
yeah,
12,000 there was at one time.
yeah.
They can do it. But I remember when I was a kid when I was in high school, Cuban Missile Crisis.
Hmm.
And they had no idea that missile was there, but we're left the farm in the morning driving into town, right? All of a sudden, I look to the side and here's this big old missile sitting up right out of the middle of this cornfield. Here's this missile site sitting there. We had no idea that thing was there.
Oh
So
my God.
that's secret, and that's the way they were. They were all over the state like that.
Well, yeah,
And when they were on full alert, they just brought them up out of the silos. They were ready to fire.
yeah. Why? Yeah. Why even bother with the whole? Well, that's the reason why they're in the middle of the United States is because you want them as far away from naval forces and bombers as possible, and then it's also they put them out there and they called it. I think they call the those states. Everyone knows them as the flyover states, but there is a kind of more insidious name, and it's the ICBM sponge.
Yeah.
And it's because to take out. You put them just far enough away from each other that you can't take multiples out with one hit. So you have
Right.
to fire at least one, and then they're nuclear hardened. So you got to probably fire a couple per silo. So the idea is you create this sponge that they're going to have to fire most of their missiles at to take out.
You're up on this stuff.
Yeah, and then you realize you're like, hey, I'm in the ICBM sponge, and it's a yeah, it's an actual term. For everyone listening, look it up. ICBM sponge. It's
I got a I got a good friend who's actually he's a lieutenant on well, there'd be another guy. I don't know if he could tell you very much. That'd be the problem. I'll
on
give you his name and you can I'll
fleek.
let him know that you can call him. Uh last time I talked to him, it's like, well, I can't tell you anything because I have to kill you.
Yeah, I
You know,
get it.
essentially, but he actually is a
Yeah.
commander of one of those. As a lieutenant, he's in charge of one of those babies. He goes
You
out there
need to get him.
12 hours of shifts at
Yeah,
5 days a week. I think they
yeah.
do.
Sit down there with your keys.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh
yeah,
yeah. Oh no, it's what's the name of the book? Command and Control by Eric M. Schlosser. That book that goes into the life in a missile silo. That stuff is insane. The security tiers, they have pistols down there, and it's like at the very least, if someone comes through those doors, you shoot them.
yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever talked to a submariner?
No, can you get me a submariner?
I can get you a submariner.
I'm gonna. Where's my phone? Okay, so I've got.
I'll make a list of these guys, and I'll have to look them up, and I'll
I will.
send you their
You don't need to
send you
say
their
their
name.
names if you don't want. You don't need to say their names right now if you don't want to. Um, what?
Uh, well, Tristan is the name of the. Let's see, Tristan. What's his last name?
So I got Brian Birdwell, 9/11 Pentagon, Texas Congressman.
Yeah,
Tristan. Is that the
he,
submariner or the
he's the missile silo guy.
missileer? Miss.
And Alexander, I think Alex is what he goes by. He's a medic
Okay.
on board a submarine. He's
That
been out. He's like an E9 now. He's pretty senior guy, and I think he just did his last submarine mission. He's getting stationed down by Ocean City there somewhere. So
oh yeah.
he'll be close to you, nearby out there.
I need I need these two guys.
I'll think of some more too. I think
Please do.
yeah. If you want to talk to a Cobra pilot, I'm pretty good friends with one of those.
Yeah.
I
Keep
pretty
spitting.
good friends with a general officer in an Oklahoma National Guard, but he was one of the presidential flight members.
What
Uh,
what's that? Air Force One?
no, Marine Corps. Marine Corps.
Submarine one?
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you call it? It's a helicopter.
Yeah. I know you're
64.
yeah.
Green one, So,
Is that
uh,
someone separate than the Cobra guy, or is that the same guy?
yeah, different guy.
Okay.
Different guy.
So I've got Brian Birdwell, 9/11 Texas Congressman. I've got 2, Tristan Missileer, 3, Alex Submariner Medic, 4, Cobra Pilot, 5, Marine
Local pilot is Mick
Mick.
Gutaw.
Mick. What was his last name?
Gutaw, Guttau.
Okay.
He was involved in Lomsom 719. So that was his song to wonder.
Yeah.
he got he got he got in on some pretty good missions of that. He was the one first ship in. He had to go in and take photographs. Not a fun trip to do.
Wow. But a great podcast. Not to sound insensitive. That probably sounds insensitive. You know what I mean.
No, I don't think anymore. I don't think all that's been declassified out there. There ain't anything that I can't talk about in Vietnam anymore. We did a lot of stuff with the special forces guys, and across the fin into Cambodia.
Yeah.
Those kind of missions where you couldn't talk about them at all. But that's all been debunked now. So
Yeah.
And then the guy down in Oklahoma, let's see, his name's Pete Costello.
Is that the Marine One guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Costilow. Costilow. Costello.
Pete Costello. Okay.
He's a guy. I mean, you'll love talking to that boy. He got that southern drawl and Texas, Oklahoma accent.
Uh-huh.
He's a big OU fan, and he's an Oklahoma graduate. So
We found Marine One. Yeah. I know. Yeah.
He'll jerk your tail.
Yeah.
He'll tell you stories, and then say, "Oh, that's all a lie."
Yeah.
It's a good story, though, don't you think?
Man, I had friends like that when I lived in South Georgia. They'd tell you the craziest story. You'd be like, "Oh my god," and they'd be like, "Yeah, I just made that up."
Yeah, yeah,
You,
yeah.
yeah,
That'd be Pete.
yeah, you dipshit. You're like, "Oh man." I
You
did have,
believe anything. You
yeah,
believe anything they tell you.
but you know, up to them, I was the city boy. I did have a friend named Grant when I lived in Valdosta, Georgia, and he used to tell me stories, and I never believed him. He was from Coffee County, which I think had a population of like 50. But I remember I went to his house when I thought he had been telling me lies for 2 years, and I finally went to his house. Sure enough, he had a pet alligator and a pet deer. The deer had a dog collar on, and the deer's name was, I think, Jesus. And then the alligator had a collar on, and his name was Elvis. Can't make this shit up, dude. You go down there and you're like, Jesus, Elvis, get on over here. And they come over like they're dogs, the alligator, the deer, and you're like, what am I looking at right now? Like, am I? And
It's real.
it was weird because his family owned a deer processing plant. So you have this big like barn type building just full of like deer hides, and he just chose one and was like, this one's gonna live. And I was like, Grant, that's some dark shit, man. But yeah, it's if you can, you obviously you don't have to say it right now.
Yeah, I'll just sit down and I'll send you some phone numbers and
Yeah,
some names and what they do, and you can
yeah,
kind of pick your pick. And
please do. Yeah, and I'll show
just
them.
let me call them before you do to tell you what you do and what you're up to. So
Yeah,
otherwise they may not answer the phone if they see you calling.
or
I'll
they,
send them your number so they know your number.
or
That's
the
the first time you called me. I thought I don't know anybody from that zip code.
yeah. That's what Ken does. He gives me numbers, and normally he's like, I'll talk to him first, but sometimes he never does. So yeah, I just end up calling someone, and they're like, "Who the hell is this?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
"It's the podcast guy," and they're like, "Who's the podcast guy?" And I'm like, "Damn it, Ken!"
So
But
Ken does that to you, huh?
yeah, Ken's the man. Ken set me up with you, with Dawn Albrock, with Bill, I think a couple others. Ken's
How
the.
did you get a hold of Ken? Or how did Ken find you?
How did I get a hold of him?
Oh, through the book, I think. Didn't somebody you said I think
No,
you said
through.
somebody sell the book or something?
So actually, I had on. This is how these things happen. So like first 20 episodes, I had on a guy named Bruce Sackman, who is a New York investigator. He was in charge of all medical serial killer investigations in the United States. Doctors that would they're psychopaths. They would get off on killing people. I saw him. I saw his book back in like January of last year. Emailed him, got him to come on. Way down the road, I was like, "Do you know any interesting guests?" And he sent me a guy named I think it was Mike Vecchione, and I had on Mike. I was like, Mike, do you know anybody interesting? And he got me Joaquin Garcia, who was in the FBI. There's a whole 60 Minutes thing on him. He took down one of the mob families in New York. He's the only undercover agent to ever become a made man. Through him, I was like, "Do you know anybody interesting?" And he was like, he talks like this, and he's like, "Tommy, I know a guy, legitimate war hero," and it was Bill Albrook. So I got Bill, and then I think Bill's like it was some maybe I think Ken helped him make the book, and so
Yeah.
Ken
Yeah.
maybe in like a somewhat of a secretarial role.
Right.
So I had on Bill, and then I was like, why don't I have on Ken? Because Ken seems like a cool guy. And so I had on Ken. No, I think Bill was like, I think he responded and was like, it was, if I can remember correctly, we're on 300 episodes. So I think he was like, talk to Ken. And so I remember he called me and we're talking and he's asking questions about the podcast. And he's like, Bill will be a great guest. And he's going on and he's going, yeah, no, I did this in Vietnam. And it's after like a half hour, I was like, do you want to come on the podcast? And he was like, sure. So he comes on. And then I was like, "Do you know any other people?" And he was like, "Yeah, I can get you Bill's brother, Don." And I had Don, and Don's gonna get me some guys. And every once in a while, Ken will be like, "Hey, I've got another idea," and he'll always say these kind of nonchalantly. He'll be like, "Do you want to get like a 3-tour Vietnam pilot?" And I was like, "Yes." Why did you not tell me this earlier? So he sent me your number, and this is how it happens. Is it just
Yeah.
to a point where yeah, I don't even remember where it begins. I'm like, oh yeah, but there are these long branches of guests of guests of guests to the point where the last one doesn't know the first one, but that's how it. And I just
Yeah.
have them on, and I like to hear interesting stories. I like to, because in a way, it's archiving them, right? It's on video. It's on hard drives in multiple locations. They're saved online. They're saved offline. There's stories of people that might not otherwise get out, right? Because if you're going for like a 60 minutes interview, you're only going to get so many guys, right? You're going to get like the guy that killed bin Laden. You're going to get, the undercover mob guy. Great stories. But those are a sliver of all the insane stories out there. So you come on here, you just tell a story, like that story is now like immortalized and it exists now for people to look at. And I kind of like that.
Yeah. Well, he's a distant contact of mine, but I've got his phone number. Hadn't talked to him in a couple of years. You know who Chris Ponto is?
Benghazi?
Benghazi.
I do.
I can give you his phone number. I went to a book signing of his once, and we had a pretty good conversation. And I tried to get him to get interested in LZ Kate because he knew movie contacts there, and he tried a few things, but we haven't heard from him since then. So,
Yeah.
but I got his phone number.
That could work. That
You
could
call
work.
him up, he'd have you some pretty good stories.
Hell yeah, he would be.
He's I don't know if he's still working as a contractor or not anymore, though. He's I know you see him advertising stuff on TV every now and then. He's mostly to do with weapons and concealed carry permits, and
Yeah.
uh, he's even advertising this food now for Four Patriots or something, I think. So he's out in the advertising world trying to make money now, I think. But he lives right down here in Omaha. So
Well, what I tell everyone that comes on is everyone that has a book or a page or a product, to me it's an exchange. I'm like, come on here, you give me content people like to watch. In exchange, I'm like, I say it in every podcast. I'm like, it'll be in the description and stick it in the top comment. So in the comment section, it's stuck at the top. I put their book or their website or whatever. To me, and I don't have a huge audience, but I figure that is my capital. That's what I can give back. So I can drive a little traffic your way. And God willing, as the podcast gets to millions of followers, well then that will be my swinging, that's what I can that will be my force. And it's yeah, so I mean that's why I pitch to people. I'm like, if you have a product, you can plug it. I don't know how many people will go there, but some people will.
yeah, I figured. I wished I could have made money talking, but I had to work for a living,
Yeah. Yeah.
I look at Rush Limbaugh, and that guy, all he does is talk, but he does research and he's got his niche there. Man,
Yeah.
he's got 40 million followers.
Yeah. I mean, if you just start talking, you should go back and look at Joe Rogan's first episode.
Joe Erwin? Yeah.
Joe Rogan.
How do you spell his Rogan?
Rogan, Rogan. He's the biggest podcast in the world.
Oh, heck yeah. I know
Yeah,
who he
yeah,
is.
Joe Rogan. Yeah. If you go back and look at his first episode, it's him in a basement with his friend. And they're just like, yeah, we're just having fun with this thing. And then you look at it now and it's like he's talking to Elon Musk or, Ed Snowden or whoever. He's interviewing presidential candidates. And
You got the audience for it.
well, it's because he kept doing episodes. And I truly believe if you just, one thing that keeps helping me is a Warren Buffett quote. And despite effort and energy, some things just take time. You can't get a baby in 1 month by getting 9 women pregnant. It just takes 9 months. And that's kind of what my logic is early on I was like, how come it's not growing faster? And I remember reading that quote probably of like March of last year. And I was like, some things just take time. It just takes time.
How much equipment do you own then? I mean, you got an office, of course, you just use a room in your house, I suppose, but you got a laptop that you use or a PC, and then you got servers that you load this stuff up on, or?
So this is a MacBook, and it's been growing and growing and growing. So it's a MacBook. There's a microphone right here. This is actually the last episode with this microphone because my new one just got in the mail. You can't see behind this. There's a bunch of hard drives that I load everything off to immediately. I've got fans to cool down the laptop when it's processing. I've got a big TV right here. What I do to my research is I have a TV, I have video games. I put on video games, I mute it, and then I listen to audiobooks or documentaries. So it's kind of, it's like playing solitaire or something. It's just something to do. I'm not paying attention. So
Right.
sometimes flying around helicopters, but I'll just turn on whatever I'm interested in. Right now, I'm listening to a history of General Smedley Butler in 1933, who's the most decorated Marine of all time. And I put it on and I'll just sit here for a couple hours just learning about him. And maybe a lot of times I'll be like, that's an interesting topic. I'll find the author and try to get him on. I have just on Christmas, my little brother, shout out to my little brother, he got me some like lights pointing down so the lighting's better. My parents bought me a camera. The camera quality it's way up there now. So the equipment it's growing and growing. I put some black curtains on either side of the flag. You can't see it, but just like within the last week, those in a lot of like recording studios, they put those like sound absorbing mats on the walls.
Oh, yeah.
To deflect reflective noise and stuff.
Yeah.
Those are really expensive. It can cost several $1,000s to do a room, and I was like, I don't have that money. A guy I had on here, Roger Williams, who's my favorite author, he told me, he's like, he's a physicist and an engineer, and he was like, dude, just get some moving blankets. It has like the same absorption. So instead of several $1,000s, I spent $60 and I bought 12 industrial sized black moving blankets. And so I pulled around some old bureaus, a couple tripods, and you can't see it right now, but I have this like semicircle of sound absorption, and it looks. I mean, I always joke if like the FBI came in here, I'd probably be arrested on suspicion of building bombs because it's just there's lights and wires and beeping shit, and but it's
Fun.
even this chair, this I did 50 episodes in a rocking chair that was like my great grandma, and it was like I think I was like breaking my back. The chair, the rocking chair it's over in the corner. It's legitimately from like World War One, and I was like my back is hurting. So
Upgraded.
yeah. So to answer your question, a lot of little things have kind of snowballed, and um, I mean, like I said, after this new microphone, I've got a microphone stand. After this, the next big one will probably be probably an actual like a desktop computer because even now this camera it can record in 4K, but it's only recording in 1080p because the laptop just can't handle it. So it's always
Mhm.
reinvesting and trying to
Get your
increase the
quality up.
quality. A big one is just I mean a big one is the ability to like not have to go work at the liquor store anymore. So I can put time into sending emails because for every guest you get, I'm not kidding when I say there's it the percentage is getting better, but I used to call it the 95% ghost rate because you'd send 100 emails, 95 people wouldn't respond to you. 5 would, 4 would say no, 1 would say sure. That takes a lot of time
Oh,
because
yeah.
it's not just copying and pasting emails. I found another and cut me off anytime if I'm just boring you.
No, no, no. I'm very interested.
So another I've kind of made my own law. I call it Tommy's law, and it's the easier it is to find someone's email, the harder it is to get them on the podcast.
No kidding, huh?
Well, what's the easiest, right? You go
Yeah.
whitehouse.gov, write a message to the president, which I tried, didn't work, right?
Yeah.
I sent emails to General Mattis, to George Bush. I got formal rejections. That was cool. But if you take some time and let's say an author and you're like, I want to get that guy on here. Sometimes you have to set aside a day, right? And this is what I'm doing today. And you kind of go hunting. Find them anywhere. Find an old website. Find an old PayPal account. Did he make a post somewhere? And you can kind of engineer it until finally you can find. And if you can find their email and it was difficult to find, if you can find it, it's almost guaranteed you'll get a response because
Yeah.
it's like a personal email.
Yeah.
Um, so that's a huge piece of it. It's not equipment, but it is a cost in that because I do have someone funding this podcast now. I can take 5 hours to go find a guest. So
Well, you
that
got to read his book too if he's a book author,
yo yeah, and so and then that is if I'm gonna have a guest on, I read their book through and through. I mean, I treat it like I treat it like a college course, like I'm trying to get into medical school. I give it my all. I listen to their book a lot of times, multiple times, and really try to understand it and, have some good questions. All those things take time. So
Yeah.
it may
Yeah.
be an hour-long podcast, but some of the authors that have been on here, it can be 2 weeks of preparation. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no idea. I didn't even know what a podcast was until probably 3 years ago.
Yeah,
I stumbled on to one I listened to pretty regular, and it's like I have no idea what kind of equipment it takes or what kind of electronics it takes, or what how much technical knowledge you got to have to
yeah.
do any of this stuff.
Oh
But
yeah.
to me, it looked like it's something would be a real fun job because you just get
Doc.
to talk to really interesting people. And I said,
Yeah.
what's behind it is, like you said, you're doing a lot of research and
Yeah.
preparation for each one of them interviews
Yeah.
to get a good interview with them.
Yeah.
Not to mention, you got to have the personality to be able to just get the best out of people
Well, yeah. You got
when
to
you're
be able to
really
turn
trying
it
to get
on.
better. Yeah.
Thank you. But yeah, that's another thing is you gotta, and again, it doesn't sound like much, but you can't be coming off a night with like inadequate sleep. If you're cranky and foggy, that
Exactly.
you got to be well rested. I exercise before it. I meditate before it. So really, in our podcast, regardless of whether or not they're an author, full night's sleep, gym, meditation. That's like 11 hours of prep right there. Just
Right.
you got
Right.
to be up and ready to go, and you got to be you have to be there 100% because to me it's more of like a respect thing than anything. It's like you're giving me the time of day, you know. I'm
Yeah.
gonna come on here and try to be like the best host I can be. Now, granted, last night I texted you at like 3 in the morning. I was like, "Can we push it back an hour?" So sometimes that happens. But
Get to sleep. I didn't know we was ever going to get on
yeah,
because
I know, right?
look,
Yeah,
these guys, I'm retired. I can pretty much get on anytime,
yeah,
but
yeah.
you got a living you got to make. But yeah, you've done a good job. Well, what is the? I mean, I'm like, when you get all done, do you edit all of it then, and then just put on an hour or something, or what do you do?
Yeah, so I take it and it's a couple of steps. The first thing I do is I compress the video from so it's because I screen record on the laptop. And but to go back to what you said, the technical knowledge, I have no idea what I'm doing. I am technologically retarded. That is so when people ask me what do you do, I'm like, dude, I am learning this in real time. Like so you can go back to earlier episodes. I don't know what I'm doing. It's, learning about sound reflection and lighting and so I'm making it up as I go. But editing, I I know that if I make it a big process and responsibility that I'm going to go in and edit for hours, then I know I won't stick with it. I'll get bored and I'll stop doing it. So what I do is I take the video, I compress it to 1080p, so that takes like 30 minutes. You just got to wait. You take that, I put it in iMovie. It's the free software that comes with the laptop, and it's just got like a little wand, just like a picture where you can
I seen that. Yeah.
I just click it, and what that does is it kind of makes the audio match because I'm right here, so my audio is louder. You're a guest, it's coming through the speakers, and it kind of does that. It does something with the color, it crops it a little bit. I export that. That maybe takes another half hour to an hour, and then I take that and I upload it to YouTube, BitChute, and Rumble, and then I upload the audio to Anchor, which hosts it on Spotify. And I put the links on like Facebook and Instagram and yeah, and then I offload it onto hard drives. I've got hard drives in a fireproof safe. Like once a week, I put them off on there just so it's saved.
Mhm.
And but aside from like editing, I
It's like you go to your bathroom breaks, you cut them out, don't you?
most of the time I don't. I used to,
Oh,
but
you don't? Oh, yeah.
now I just like I'm like you know what? Let's really make it a real experience. Bathroom breaks are a real part of life, so it's whatever. Um, I probably should, and maybe I will one day. But the way I look at it is I want it to be as like real as possible. So like when people watch the podcast and it's like and we're recording, they're seeing me talk to the person for the first time. Granted, we might talk for a minute before we start recording, but you're seeing it as we go. It's like, "Hi, I'm Tommy," and it's just like we just roll as we go, and then it wraps up, and it's like, "Have a good one," and then So that's what I try to do is I just try to make it as natural as possible, and then I upload it, and it takes a while to upload, but yeah, it's a
Good time to call. Well, do you ever bring a guest into your room there? And then just talk to them back and forth? Or
I actually never have, and honestly, it sounds bad, but I
just
think
two microphones to double everything, which you
yeah,
gotta
yeah,
have probably. So
well,
you gotta have a producer and a director then too, probably. So
yeah, and
keep it simple, you know.
yeah. To me, I look at it as like this: by having a studio where you brought people in, I think that would limit your reach of guests because if you're Joe Rogan and you have the money to fly out whoever, like that's fine, but you have to remember if you're flying someone out, you have to assume that that person has the luxury to take a day off work or to use a day of their vacation to come away from their family. When I do this, it's I'm in your house and then it's over and you're in your house. And then the other thing I look at is I remember going to medical school interviews in 2013. You got to go to the airport, you got to go through security, you fly out to the city, you get to your hotel, you change, you try to calm down, get a good night's sleep, wake up early, take a cab to the place, and then you got to put on a suit and tie, and you're sitting there in a room, and you're nervous, you're not in your hometown, you don't know where you are, you're all discombobulated, and you're like, I want to be a doctor because, and then you leave, and you got to fly back home, you got to come, and it's this long 72-hour process for 15 minutes face to face, and you get the worst out of people because they're so tired and stressed and jet lagged that I think
And then you don't get the job.
well, that's what happens is more times than not you get a thanks but no thanks. So I figure by kind of beaming into your house, I get the most relaxed version of people. You're in your chair, you're on your computer, you can go to your bathroom. It's and then as soon as it's over, teleportation, you're in your house.
Done.
So
Yeah, back to the
it's
bar.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Go do whatever. You're home. The joke I always make is, you don't have to wear pants. Who knows? Is it, who are we wearing pants? Nobody knows. That's the surprise. It's
Where'd you get the shirt?
yeah. What?
Where'd you get your Nassau shirt? You take
That's
a
the
tour
shirt.
down here?
Oh no, I bought this because when I was gonna have on or when I had on Charlie Duke, the
Oh,
Apollo.
there you go.
Yeah, but it arrived late in the mail, so I didn't have it. So now I just got an NASA shirt. What's an awesome shirt? But yeah, I don't, and now that it's kind of, even if this podcast kind of quote unquote made it and I made a lot of money, I don't know if I'd have people in studio. I've kind of grown to like this for what it is. And
Well, if you're successful doing it, why change?
yeah, yeah. And it's,
Works, fix it.
yeah, I like that. I like that you don't have to leave your home because you are going to be the most comfortable you can be when you're in your own. Like a lot of people are sitting there with their dog, like their kids will run in. Like I like that. It's real. I don't know. I think a studio almost, it starts to get a little too produced. And my fear is for it to become like television where it's like, welcome back. And we got, sponsored by the Ford. And I'm like, oh, kill me now. So, but we're going on 2 hours. So let's wrap this one up. And,
See you tomorrow.
you're coming back tomorrow. Yeah. And
Same
we're
time tomorrow, 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock. What do you want to do?
2 o'clock your time, 3 o'clock my time.
Okay, sounds good.
Because I don't want to say 2 o'clock and then text you at 3 in the morning and be like, "Can we do 3?" So that's just
Now, whatever works for you. I said I'm pretty loose here. So
yeah. And this is
time. So,
yeah this one so this was a 2 hour podcast, so this will take a little longer to edit and to upload. So I mean,
well, the last half hour you can just cut off because we didn't talk about the.
no, I upload all of it. It's just it's if you're listening to it and you get bored of it, you can just close out. I like to put it all up. Sorry to answer your question. Editing. I do edit out. I give all the guests. I have a zero questions asked, like zero tolerance on my part. If they want something edited out, I will edit it out. I'm not going to be here and be like, I want you to leave that in. If someone says, hey, I mentioned a friend's name, a family member's name, whatever, or maybe I said something political and I can't do that because of my job, I'll edit that out. And I've had people complain, be like, why is there 5 minutes missing in the middle of it? And I say, shut up. That's why. I don't care. That's my guarantee to guess. It's not live, and to me, it makes it a little more comfortable for them that they know they can sit on here and maybe you have a beer and you loosen up and you say something stupid and you're like, can you edit that out? And I'm like, I sure can. So, yeah, that's how I do it. And I also tell all my guests, no questions asked. If at any point in the future you want me to take it down, I'll take it down. I personally don't want to, but I'll take it down if for whatever reason Yeah.
Well, like I said, do they know who I am? I guess I said who I was at the first, but somebody wanted to contact me. They'd have to contact you first, or you put that information at the end of the.
No, I don't. I've never actually thought about that. No, I don't put in contact information more so out of just like respect for the guest. But I mean, I guess I could start doing. I probably have to ask guests. I guess I kind of lean towards the side of I respect their anonymity, and but yeah, I guess anyone listening, if you want his contact information, comment. I guess yeah, people have said that, like how would I reach this person, and I might send them their website or something. Yeah.
Well, what the reason I asked, there's occasionally I'll see somebody on, a movie or a documentary or something. Somebody I know, and I lost track of them years ago.
Yeah.
I did that recently, uh, watching a documentary on the documentary when it came out. I know that guy.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought he was dead.
Yeah.
There he is. He's still doing this stuff, and I was able to get a hold of him.
Yeah.
There's another one of my long lost stories. I don't know if you have got time to.
I could do it all the time in the world. I don't care.
I had a rescue of an F-100 pilot that jumped out.
Mhm.
He had to bail out. He got an engine flame out or something. He didn't get shot down, but he had to bail out, and I rescued him. I brought him up out of the jungle, and I don't know. We didn't think a whole lot about it. We dropped him off and took off and left. And went on about our mission that day. I've always wondered. I'd like to find that guy. Find out if he ever got out of there. He broke his leg, in the jump, going into the jungle. And I've always wanted to talk to him. I thought, well, he might see me. I'll talk about the experience sometime, and then maybe he'll find me. He might be dead by now. I don't know.
Yeah.
He was an F-100 pilot, and I've always been able to want to find him, and I've never been able to do it. So
Maybe he'll watch this, and if he is,
he's me. Then you've got another guy you can interview.
there you go. There you go.
That's got to be a heck of a story when you go through a bailout.
That's got to be. There's no way that's not a near-death experience. Jumping out of a moving plane.
Well, that and you jump into a jungle, and he was under attack once he hit the ground. Had to escape and evade with a broken leg, and then he had to get a hold of me. I was just happened to be the closest helicopter, and I had to get him out of the jungle. And that was a heck of a.
Did he have those like high vis panels?
What do you mean on?
Didn't they have those in Vietnam, like high visibility panels you'd put around like a crash site?
Oh, he may have had, but he was down in the jungle. We could just barely see him. Only reason I knew where he was at is because I saw a chute. It was hanging in the tree, and he didn't put out because he had an emergency radio. He actually got a hold of him before he hit the ground. When he was in the air, he come on the air and called Mayday, Mayday, and he was about 5 miles ahead of me, and we saw him bail out. And of course, we dropped what we were doing, headed over toward him, and when we got there, of course, the chute was in the trees, and he was talking to me on the radio. But the time, see, you don't. Well, we got all these procedures, but you'd hover over the parachute because if there's enemy in the area, they know exactly where he's at now. So you find out where he's located, you get him marked on your map. So and then you go out in orbit somewhere, and you try to talk to him and find out what's the best way to rescue him.
Yeah.
And then you either go in yourself or you call in a Huey or a smaller aircraft, or if there's a ground unit somewhere you can stick in there to get him, he can do that. Well, he punched out on his way down. He was like, I don't know, 1,000 feet or so probably when he bailed out. And then he got on the radio. They carry one on their survival kit on the radio. So he called Mayday, Mayday, and I said, well, I'm inbound toward you. And he said, oh yeah, I see you. He said, well, I'm going into the trees. And so he went into the trees, and then he went dark on me for about 10 minutes. And what happened? He got hung up in the tree with the parachute, and he had to cut himself loose, and then he fell and broke his leg when he hit the ground. That's what he thought anyway. Yeah. So anyway, we went in and rescued him, and that took a while to get him out of there. And then we took him back to Dalat and dropped him off, and we went back and finished our mission for the day. We came back and picked him up, and they had his leg in a splint by then. We took him over to Phan Rang, where he was from, dropped him off, and we flew on home. And I never contacted him. I didn't take his name. We didn't pay. I don't know. We just didn't wasn't thinking at the time. Well, it'd be kind of fun to talk to him later, find out how he did. Whether he got back flying again or they sent him home or what. The guy owes me a beer. So.
Damn right he does. That's the take home point of that is in
Yeah.
conclusion, he owes me a beer.
Yeah, I got to find him, or he's got to find me, one or two.
Yeah, he's got debts to pay.
Only fair, isn't it?
It's only fair. And it doesn't matter if it's 50 years. There's no statutes of limitations. He owes you a beer.
Heck no.
We will hunt him down.
Yeah. Well, that'd be a good mission for you.
Well,
you got research skills I don't have. You can go out and find him. I've looked on F100 websites, and I've looked at that unit. I've nailed it down to the unit, but I've never been able to find anybody.
Got to keep digging.
I'm sure they have reunions or something.
Got to keep digging.
It's got to just spend the time and tap into it and see if I can't locate him. I know you can go on a website, a Vietnam Helicopter Pilot Association. You can identify every aircraft that was shot down, every pilot. Pretty much they've got every one of the 4,000 plus of us where we shot down, what day and where and who. There's tons of information out there, but I haven't found anything on F-100 units. I know where they're stationed and where they were in Vietnam, but as far as rosters, who's on them, reunions, nothing. Yeah. They're not a very active group, or I haven't been able to tap in to find the resource for it. So
it's researching people. It's like there's no set way. Like you find like you said, like a website, like whoever. What you do is you just start with like a shotgun approach. You find any, at the bottom of the website, is there a contact us link? Is there someone's running the website so you can find whoever's there? Or you make a post and you say, hey, you don't even say, do you know this person? You say, does anyone know what steps I would take to find this person? And you keep asking. It really is like metal detector. You just keep asking and eventually you hit something somewhere. And someone's like,
I leave is all I need.
And they might not even know the person, but they might be like, I know where you should go. A case in point is Bruce Sackman, New York investigator. He has indirectly led to you. You guys have no relation to each other, but that's why you're on this podcast right now, is because I talked to him. So it's just a weird, you just have to keep pushing. Eventually you'll find someone's old AOL account, or you'll find them posting on whatever. And sometimes you do all of it and you find someone and they go, yeah, I do know where he is, but he doesn't like to be contacted. Yeah. It's the end.
The wonder of the internet, as they say, man, it's amazing.
Dude, yeah.
We lost an aircraft in Vietnam, just disappeared on us in a bad storm one time. Never found him. You don't leave your buddy behind, but we had to with this. We couldn't find him. And 1999, little guy, fisherman, Vietnamese guy, threw his line into the river and brought it back out and caught his line. And he turns around, and there's the Chinook crashed in the side of the mountain right behind him in the jungle.
Holy shit.
That's how they found him. And of course, the long story was they recovered the aircraft and the remains in the aircraft, and were able to identify him and brought him back. And I, indirectly, I found out about it before they brought him back from Hawaii. The remains were in Hawaii through one of the family members' grandson called me up on the phone because my name was on the unit that his granddad had served in. So that kind of led to another guy. Anyway, so and up to that time, I only knew two guys from my unit from Vietnam. We came home, we all just went about our business and kind of lost track of each other. Well, then through the wonder of the internet, we found 187 people from our unit that had served in that unit that came to the funeral. We had it at Funeral at Arlington National Cemetery in August of 2000. Or 2001, I guess it was, right before 9/11. But that, none of that would have happened without the internet.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have found anybody.
Yeah.
It'd have been a long story.
Yeah, no, it's the people you can find. It's insane. It's insane. You can find anyone. You really can. I had on a guy that walked on the moon. Like, how the hell else would that ever happen? In what lifetime would that happen where you get a guy that walked on the moon? Yet here we are.
Yeah. Talking to each other.
Exactly. Well,
All right. Well, we better hang it up. We'll see.
let's wrap this one up. It won't be uploaded until like the wee hours, so but I'll send it to you, and then I guess I'm talking to you tomorrow, so I'll we can follow up on those potential guests tomorrow, and you contact them, and you can send them this podcast so they can see what it's like, and blah blah blah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, man, Mr. Beckenauer,
Okay.
thank you so much for coming on here, and I'll see you tomorrow. So
I forgot. What time did you say? 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock?
2 p.m. your time, 2 p.m. your time, 3 p.m. my time.
Okay.
Same
Very
time.
good.
Same time as today.
Same time. All right. Very good.
Thank you very much. I'll see you tomorrow.
My old brain, the senior moments, I got to write it down.
Dude, I'm 30 and I still have everything written down. I'm like, what am I doing? So it's fine. I still have alarms, so it's good. We're good. But
If you need to change it. Okay.
all right, my man. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.